Is free birth safe? Is it a legitimate choice?
A decision to free birth is a decision to step out of mainstream maternity care and take full responsibility over that.
This series sets out to examine free birth and birth culture more broadly, at a moment when public discourse, online and in the media, has largely settled on a single narrative: that natural birth outside the medical system is unsafe, unsavoury, and difficult to justify. Some of that scrutiny is warranted, some of it may not withstand closer examination.
Childbirth is rarely a medical event.
This series is an attempt to determine which is which.
And these are the people that are sitting in judgment of the free birthers and the home birthers, and their house is such a mess.
Over the course of this investigation, you will hear from medical professionals, researchers, and women who have chosen to free birth.
I think that free birth is something that is here to stay. You're not going to talk women out of it. It's only going to grow.
In an effort to establish what the evidence actually shows about risk in birth. Why are women gravitating towards this option?
I think there's an element of ignorance there.
And where are there gaps in the information in regards to this way of birthing?
I think it's important that we regain those skills that have been co-opted and medicalized.
This series does not promise definitive conclusions. I am trusting you, the listener, to engage with the material with nuance and a critical eye, and to weigh the evidence for yourself. This is the Birth Series from Return to Wisdom, and I'm your host, Kishila Tonyazzini.
Are we going to get cancelled?
Yes, probably.
We're going to get cancelled for this conversation.
I am ridiculously picky about what goes on my skin, and I have zero time for complicated routines. For years, I was reading ingredient labels, Googling things I couldn't pronounce, and still not trusting what I was buying. And then I found In Bloom, and honestly, these guys are legends. Pure plant-based skincare made in Byron Bay. No toxins, no fillers, no fuss. The kind of brand that actually cares about what they're putting in the bottle and on your body. If you're as picky as I am and don't have time to mess around, this is it. In Bloom are offering Return to Wisdom listeners a discount. Use my code Return to Wisdom Podcast at inbloom.com. That's INBLUEM.com. Link will be in the show notes. Can I tell you what I've been putting in my morning beverage every single day lately? Because I'm obsessed. I've been a Superfeast devotee for years now. Their range of medicinal mushrooms and tonic herbs is extraordinary, and I come back to different ones depending on what my body needs. Right now, my absolute go-to is tremella. Known as the beauty mushroom, it's been used for thousands of years as a deep hydration tonic. I stir it into my morning drink every day, and my skin has genuinely never been more plump and hydrated. Family-owned, Australian, pure extracts and nothing added. And they only sell what they take themselves. For me, that kind of integrity means everything. Return to Wisdom listeners get 10% off with my code Return to Wisdom at superfeast.com. That's superfeast.com. And the links will be in the show notes. Welcome everyone to Return to Wisdom. Today I am speaking to someone who I have been so excited to speak to for a very long time, Mary Lou Singleton. I guess I've been following or just recently caught up on a lot of the things happening around free birth and Free Birth Society. I listened to the podcast released by The Guardian just recently, binged it. And gosh, I just feel like there is so much, for lack of better terminology, muck in the water that really needs to be cleared out. And I know that there are so many people who are a bit confused on how they feel about the whole situation. Free Birth Society is getting highly conflated with free birth, so there's that too. And so I am so excited to have you in, Mary Lou, because with your history, and I just feel like the way you speak about everything is balanced and grounded, and I feel like my audience are really going to appreciate your views and wisdom here. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm really, really excited to talk to you.
Oh. For anyone who is new to you and your work, would you be able to give us a little history of how you got into midwifery and your way of thinking and believing about birth?
Sure. So I knew from the time I was a little girl, I wanted to help women have babies, and was told that meant I wanted to be a doctor. So I was tracked. I went to college thinking that I was going to go to medical school. I was into school, like that just seemed like a reasonable thing to do. And then I learned about midwifery in an anthro class, and it blew my mind. And then I thought I was going to become a nurse midwife. And then I learned about Ina May Gaskin and read Spiritual Midwifery. And it was just this like, wow, like this is the kind of midwife I want to be. This is what I want to do. I went to the farm in Summertown, Tennessee when I was a young woman. I was just 21 years old, and spent a summer with Ina May, just being, I was just kind of soaking up everything she said. And she recommended I come to New Mexico and become an apprentice trained midwife here in New Mexico, where we have an uninterrupted tradition of midwifery. New Mexico is one of the only states in the United States where midwifery was never criminalized, and it's just a wonderful, supportive place to be a home birth midwife. I apprenticed, I practiced as a very busy home birth midwife for, over 15 years, and then made a decision I wanted to do more primary care and became a nurse practitioner. And now I have a family medicine clinic where I do mostly primary care, taking care of across the lifespan, lots of babies, lots of children in the practice. And I still attend a few births a year, but it's definitely not my main gig anymore.
I know. I feel like I took photos of births for a little while there, and being on call, like I was just like, oh man, and I'm only the photos. Like imagine being a midwife. I couldn't. Yeah, it's a big commitment.
I loved it, and it was a true spiritual vocation for me. I had to do it. I was on fire to do it. And I never resented it until I hit a place in my life. Actually, my second child got very sick when he was 10. He got cancer when he was 10. And that was insane. That was a world no parent ever thinks they're going to be entering. And I couldn't be on call. I had to give all of my attention to him. He had a brain tumor. He had a lot of neurological issues. I just had to really dedicate myself to his healing. And during that time, I realized, my births were so straightforward. I had a midwife-assisted home birth with my first. I had a free birth with my second. I've been in labor less than 10 hours of my life. I just am blessed with a body that's really, my ancestors were good at giving birth. I have birthed relatively, I wouldn't say it's ever easy, but smoothly and without complications. When I really needed a midwife was when my son had cancer. That's when I needed someone holding my hand, reminding me to breathe, telling me I'm going to get through it. It feels like it's never going to end, but it's going to end. And I wanted to bring that midwifery model of personalized care and of advocacy and presence to primary health care, and to be that for the families in my care, most of whom will never need me to step in that capacity. But when they do, I really know how to advocate for someone when things that you never expected to happen are happening.
Oh, wow. That's really powerful. And before we jumped on, we were talking about the initiation of birth and how it does bring this power to you as a woman. And I love that you can then translate that to experiences in your life where you need that power again. It's
Right. Birth is the human template of the creative experience, of the transformative experience. I really believe that everything we learn in birth serves us every time we need to change and grow and expand. And I wish that for every mother, to have that wisdom just grounded in her cells, that we know a good birth can give a woman. But yeah, I do feel like that's what I bring to my current clients who are not usually pregnant. But whatever they're going through, that midwifery presence and that birthing wisdom presence is going to help with the human experience.
I wonder what the ongoing effects are of those who don't actually get to experience their birth fully. So let's get controversial straight away. So those who, have an elective C-section and they don't experience any of their labour, I feel like perhaps there's more of an initiation if you've been in labour for days and then end up with an emergency C-section, but like without experiencing any of the like the grunt of what birth is there to provide us, or even just being numbed out by an epidural. It's like, what are we missing there that then, there are probably tools that, we could take into further things. Having a sick child at any capacity just is the worst, and it is such an area, a time that you do need to breathe and you do need to like calm yourself because you're like the strong presence. And I haven't gone through anything with any of my children as severe as cancer. Even just fevers, like when it's a heavy fever and you're like, oh, it's not fun. Yeah. And you've got to live that with your kid. It's just one of those moments that birth is one of those moments that's just transforms every part of your parenting and journey forward as a mother. So no, it's really interesting. On that, I wanted to know what helped you make your decisions around your own births.
So my own mother had a really bad birth with me, and she would mention it frequently of just how sad she was about the birth that we had. I'm the middle of Irish triplets. Like we're all the same age. We're all like a year apart. And my mom, like her mom before her, had really fast, vaginal births. Her mother had 11 children in a farmhouse. As did every generation before her, right? They all had that. So I'm the first hospital born in my line, my personal line. And my mom was going really fast. She got to the hospital. They knocked her out against her will. She was a nurse and didn't want anesthesia. She wanted a natural birth, but was told, we don't do that here. That's not an option in a little town in 1969. Was given general anesthesia against her will. I came out very quickly after that, needing a full resuscitation, this anesthetized baby. She hemorrhaged. I was taken to the nursery. She didn't see me for 3 days. They were short-staffed. It was around Christmas. They kept forgetting to bring me in. And we never bonded. And it really messed up our relationship. Like, I just had this understanding from a young age that the way I was born was one of the reasons I just never could relate to my mom. And on top of that, being the middle of 3 kids who were, 3 kids in 2.5 years in the 70s, Generation X, raised on neglect and hose water as a cultural phenomenon. Like, I don't remember spending any time with my mom. I don't remember ever being connected to my mom until my mom got cancer when I was an older teenager, and when I was a junior in college, I dropped out of school to go home and be part of her hospice care. And all this bonding happened on her deathbed, like in the last few weeks of her life, where there was nothing but universal, unconditional love in the space between us. And I bonded with my mother for the first time when she was dying. And this was all happening as I was reading Suzanne Arms' The Immaculate Deception, and I was reading Spiritual Midwifery, and I was reading Elizabeth Noble's work and Heart and Hands. And I just understood that birth is everything, that our initiation into this world sets us up for who we are as a person. And I knew I wanted to have home births. I wanted to repair what had been broken in my line. And
you mentioned that you had a midwifery assisted home birth and then a free birth. What was your reasoning behind having the free birth the second time?
My first birth was fine. It was like 6 hours start to finish. I had a childless midwife who didn't have a lot of experience, and she didn't believe I was going as fast as I was. I hit this place where I wanted to push and the midwife wasn't there, and all my support people were freaked out, and nobody actually said don't push, but I just held back. I felt like I couldn't birth until the midwife was there, that it wasn't safe to birth until the midwife was there. And I held that baby. I was like sucking the baby up with every contraction. I'm a very strong-willed person. And it was a first baby, you know, so, and she was close to 9 pounds. So I could do that. I could resist pushing in a way you can't, like with a second baby or with a smaller baby. Just waiting for the midwife to come, waiting for the midwife to come. And then the midwife got there, and I expected her to like know something I didn't know about having the baby. And everything that was dissatisfying about my birth was because I trusted the midwife more than I trusted myself. Like, I should have just pushed my baby out. I would have had a 4-hour labor probably and just gotten the baby out. It took me a long time to get into pushing after actively not pushing. Like, it took me a long time to figure out how to effectively push. I was really like getting exhausted at that point. And then when I was on my hands and knees, I'm finally like, oh, I feel it. I feel the baby coming down. The midwife got in my face and said, wouldn't you be more comfortable in the bed? And got me on my back in the bed, because you're so suggestible at that point, right? And then I had a really bad tear, which I don't think I would have had if I'd stayed on my hands and knees. And then a few minutes after the birth, I felt like my placenta was ready, and she said, no, there's no way it can be ready yet. And then it ended up taking 1 hour and 45 minutes to get my placenta out because it had separated and my cervix had started to close down. And if I had just been trusting myself, I would just stood up and pushed my placenta out. And so I'm not mad at my midwife, and I'm not mad at myself. And those lessons were very helpful for me as someone becoming a midwife and then practicing as a midwife, to do everything I could in the prenatal care to let this woman know, you know, she's the expert. I'm here to support. I'm here to hold space. I can advise if you ask for that, but you don't have to follow my advice. Like, no one knows how to get this baby out better than the woman. I think my lessons really helped me become the midwife I was, but I didn't want a repeat of that at my second birth. I just wanted to be left alone and to do it.
Yeah, no, I feel like when it comes to deciding to free birth, because I actually put a question box up on my social media a week or so ago. By the time this releases, it was probably a month or so ago. But just asking, you know, if anyone had any burning questions about birth in general. And someone had written in and was like, well, how do you know if you want a free birth? And I was like, interesting question, because I feel like if that's how you feel about it, you don't. Like if you have to ask, like, how do I know if I want a free birth? Well, I think it has to really come from I just want to be by myself. Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to tell anyone to do something that they then go and do and regret. But it's like a real inner knowing. And I know some people make the decision from previous like trauma. I mean, my experience was somewhat similar to yours in the way that I had my first baby in hospital and everything kind of went down without a hitch. But there were things that was like I was being told to push really hard and hold my breath while I pushed, and felt like my eyeballs were going to come out of my skull. And there was just I was told to move in ways that didn't feel correct. They wanted to monitor the baby, which made me have to move out of a position that felt really right into a position that didn't feel right. And then it felt like things were getting delayed because of all of that interaction. And so when I went to, like, when I fell pregnant again, it was very much just like, oh, I just want to be, like, I just want it to happen before I get to the hospital. Like, that was kind of the thing that kept coming up for me. I'm like, I'd listen to stories of women who accidentally birthed in their car, or they were just in the shower and whoop, baby came out. I'm like, that's the experience I'm going for. That's the one. And I didn't know at the time that home birth or free birth, like anything, was a thing. It was just like, babies can be born before you get to the hospital, and that's cool too. And I was really hoping for that.
Right, and it happens all the time, and it seems like it's always fine, right?
Yeah.
When you hear those stories,
Yeah.
if you factor out the preemies that are just coming too fast, like the term babies that come before the woman gets to the hospital always do just fine.
Yeah. It's more like, I think the only person that struggles in that situation is usually the father that is there driving the car, or like they're having to catch a baby and they're just not prepared for it at all. Or you're on the side of the road calling an ambulance, and that seems to be the most traumatized person in that situation. But yeah, mum and baby seem to be fine every time, and they were the stories. They're the only stories I had prior to, like, I even had heard them before my first birth, and then with my second birth, I'm like, I'm just going to stay home for as long as humanly possible. So there's such limited time for any of that interaction before we go into hospital. And then I did that, and my baby came, and everything was fine. Yeah, and so when we go into the situation that I find the free birth world is, or the birth world is now, where we've got women choosing to free birth, and lots of advocates of free birth, and lots of information out there now on free birth, and multiple podcasts, and lots of influencers who are having very easy free births as well. I myself am like wondering, okay, what is actually good to be promoting? What is the information that should be going out there? What should women be receiving to make fully informed decisions on the way they're choosing to birth? And so, yeah, I don't know. I just went on a total rant there, but I'd be interested to hear your take on, I guess, free birth as a birth choice, and as now a very cultural, social media, I don't know, kind of trendy thing to do, and then also as potentially an ideology.
I think that throughout history and now, intuitively, most women want an attended birth. I think that that's how our species is wired to deliver. The way they say that there are three species that have attended births: the elephants, the dolphins, and the humans have a tradition of midwifery. Probably among dolphins and elephants, there are females that just go off and do it themselves, but midwifery is a tradition in our species that is as old as humanity, in my belief system. And I think that that's well documented historically and anthropologically and archaeologically, that midwives have attended birth. And when you talk to women, most of them do want a sister or someone at their birth there. And then we have this group of outliers who are women who really just want to be left alone. They just want to do it on their terms. Like, don't touch me, don't talk to me, just let me do my thing. Let me go animal and do my thing. It's interesting being old enough to have this reality where most of my memories predate influencer culture, and all of my midwifery training, all of my training to attend birth came before influencer culture. So the times we're in are very different than who I am as a time traveler who ended up here, where things are very different. But what I would see coming up as a midwife in the 90s, the early 2000s, was there was this subset of women who just wanted to be left alone. And then there was the bigger reality of women who wanted an attended birth. And then somehow free birth became a commodity and a fad, and like you said, an ideology with dogma and rigidity, which what do we know? The two things that are going to mess your birth up more than anything else are dogma and rigidity. Children are dogma burners. They come here to find everything you are certain of, and they're going to turn it just into ruin, right? They're just going to tear it to shreds.
I feel like that has absolutely been my experience. Like 100%, nothing has, I don't think anyone has said anything that rings more true for me ever in the history of my life.
Right? So just let it go. I mean, and that's the birth process of just dissolving and letting it go. Everywhere you are hard or rigid, you have to soften, or that baby's not going to come out. And for most healthy women, it's the mental, the psychospiritual hardness and rigidity that has to dissolve to get the baby out more than the physical. It's we're blessed to live in a time where most people are in healthy bodies and didn't grow up with rickets and didn't have incredibly malnourished childhoods that left their pelvises misshapen. Most difficult births come out of not being able to let go psychologically, right? So you have to let go of everything. You have to soften around everything where you're clenching and hard, and usually that's a mental process in birth, 9.5 times out of 10, right? And it concerns me, the dogma and rigidity around free birth. And I think we are seeing the inevitable karmic backlash to that, to creating this hardness and sureness and hubris around anything about birth. It's the shadow will be brought into the light, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, I find it, I think, confusing because my personal experience with free birth was so elated and easy and straightforward. I mean, again, like you said earlier, like birth is never easy. It's always a transformative experience. But in terms of, I was pregnant, went into birth, the baby came out. Like I watched the baby. 3 of my 4 free births, I actually had someone come in after the birth to look out for my baby and make sure that everything was okay, because I didn't feel confident and I just didn't feel knowledgeable enough in that area. And I'm like, okay, I can outsource this, but yeah, it went down. Like the birth part was like, it just happened and it was great. And so I've taken that into a lot of the interviews I've done and the stories that I've shared previously. And I mean, I know so many women who have had that experience exactly as well. So it's very easy to then conflate that and be like, yeah, like when you hear someone like, yeah, well, free birth is just natural. Like everyone should know or be prepared at least for a free birth, because it can happen, can sneak up on you. There are those that it does sneak up on. But, and then when like more is said, I don't know, in the Guardian podcast that I was listening to, there were some things that like clips that were taken out from the Free Birth Society, and for anyone who hasn't listened to it, it is a total breakdown of Free Birth Society in particular. But there were things where it's like, well, I've never seen this bad outcome happen in a birth, and I've never seen this bad outcome happen in a natural birth where it's undisturbed and unassisted and what have you. And because of my experience and other people I've spoken to, it's so easy to listen to that and it'd be like, yeah, of course, cool. And then it's so hard to then get other statistics, because in free birth, no one is actually counting. There's no and especially if like one of the major podcasts is kind of selecting which stories they share and which they don't, it's really hard to get a gauge on like, okay, what is everyone else's experience? Like what are massively external people's experience in the same realm, and how is it going down in,
I guess, in other circles. And I think when there was some light shone on all the poor outcomes that were happening, I mean, in our area, gosh, it must be nearly 2 years ago, there was an article that came out saying between the Sunshine Coast, which is about a 3.5-hour drive from where I am to where I am, there was like 9 stillbirths recorded in free births, and that was over maybe a 2-year period. Oh my gosh, I definitely had these statistics down a little bit better in my previous podcast, but it was kind of interesting because it's like, well, how many free births is that out of? And then when you look at stillbirths that occur in hospital in like Australia wide, there's nearly 6 a day. So it was like, it's really hard to gauge the numbers on what would be fall within, and I hate talking about this stuff in statistics because obviously these are actual people and everyone, like actual lives that are being affected. But when you do look at numbers to see what is like falls within the range of normal with hospital and home birth, and then look at free births, it's like, well, yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to like look at that and then be able to make an informed decision if you were a woman going into this with just the information on hand. So I do wonder about how influencer culture has played a role in that perception, and how the Free Birth Society has played a role in that perception, because if we're not sharing poor outcome stories of the free birth, I mean, there's plenty of poor outcome stories with any other birth that you listen to. And there's no statistics around it, and there's no one that can be like, okay, these are numbers, this is like probabilities and how it goes down. Then it's like, well, women are really in the dark when they're making these decisions.
I'm a big proponent of risk assessments, and I don't think there should be rules of what women can and cannot do around birth. I really believe it is absolutely up to each individual woman. But I think women have not been given adequate tools to do risk assessments on who's a good free birth candidate, who is likely to have a really normal, straightforward process. In the same way that healthy, normal people don't just drop dead. If you are a healthy woman having a healthy pregnancy, it's very unlikely your baby is just going to die without there being first yellow flags and then red flags and then an emergency. Every once in a while, things can happen. You could have a total placental abruption. That's really rare outside of like some kind of huge trauma or a sick woman. Placental abruptions are usually partial, and there's plenty of time to intervene, and there are signs of that. Other things, like you could have a blood clot and just die, right? But we assume that's not going to happen. We assume you're not going to have a massive pulmonary embolism as a healthy young person, even though every once in a while it happens. So what do we know about birth? We know these guardrails that are very clear. We have excellent data. We have excellent statistics that if you are a baseline healthy person going into your pregnancy and through your pregnancy, and you have one term head down baby at the start of labor, and your labor does not last more than 48 hours, you are almost certainly going to have a healthy baby at the end of that process. I have yet to hear a story of a death that occurred at a free birth that was within those parameters. And the other thing is that the water is staying clear, that you don't have meconium stained fluid. I could be wrong, but so far, every story I have heard been labors going on for days and days, babies well past 2 weeks past their due date, thick meconium stained fluid, just, failure to progress in labor, like labor's just going on and on. That's not normal. It's not normal to be in labor for 5 days. Something is wrong. And women were getting information from women that they projected authority onto that anything is normal. Everything is normal. It's normal for your water to start off clear and then 2 days later be brown and smell bad, that's still normal. That's not normal. That's a good sign that, that's a baby that is either about to die or is already dead possibly. Like that's a baby that needs medical assistance. So I think that's what I would like, is to get this information out to women that if you're staying within these guardrails, everything's fine. If you want to deviate from those guardrails, that's your choice, but know that the risks are higher. And really that's where intuition comes in. That's where we can't quantify that process of, some women just know everything's going to be fine if they have this breech baby at home, even though their midwife has advised against it, even though they understand that literally every single home birth study that's looked at breech delivery has shown incredibly high mortality compared to head down babies. It's like 1 in 8 to 1 in 10 babies born breech vaginally in a home birth setting will die according to the studies. It means 90% of the time it goes fine, but are you okay with those odds as the mother, It's so hard to find. Sometimes I feel like the only person working in the birth world willing to split this hair, right? Say, you still have autonomy, but know the risks.
Yeah.
That, twins are much higher risk than one baby. Like really, yes, there's a good chance they're going to come out just fine, probably a 3 out of 4 chance that everything will be fine, but about 1 in 4 times, one of the babies is going to need help or resuscitation, or there's going to be a bad bleed. It's a trickier situation. Do I know women who free birth twins? Yes, and it's been fine for most of them. Of all the ones I know personally, it's been fine. For me, I would recommend, if you're choosing to have twins at home, to have 3 midwives there. They can sit in the other room and not bother you, but if something goes wrong, you need 3 women to help you out with it, because you've got 2 babies and a mom, and that would be my advice. You're welcome to not take my advice, but I think that's very different than saying twins are a variation of normal and it's going to be fine. And look at this lady, she had free birth twins and everything's fine. Yeah, that's true for her and that's great. And we need to hear that story. We need to know that can happen. And we simultaneously need to hold that this is a higher risk situation, and to put that in on the scales of our heart and figure it out within ourselves, not because, not doing it to be cool, not doing it because somebody else told you it would be fine.
That was something that I found quite interesting. I feel like some of the stories that were being shared, in circles that I had been in here and online, that like, oh, this person had placenta previa and she birthed her baby and her placenta at the same time. And it's like, those stories were kind of being shared when someone had a genuine concern about something like placenta previa. And it was like, oh, well, I know a story about, this person having this experience and it was fine. And it's like, yes, okay, maybe, I don't know. Like do we know that person? Like how many people did that exchange like ears to mouth to before you heard that story? And do we take that as like, oh, okay, well then everything would be fine? Or do we still, tread with caution because the hospital, which, has failed so many in so many ways, is saying, well, placenta previa is actually a really, potential risk and we can't actually have you going into labor with placenta previa. We need to do a C-section prior to that. So I feel like, yeah, maybe it's just like a swinging pendulum and we're trying to find the middle ground somewhere, but everyone's so uncomfortable with knowing or listening to what risks are because they're like, oh, I don't want fear in my realm while I'm giving birth. I don't want that to affect me while I'm giving birth. But at the same time, it's like, well, how do you make an informed decision then for your birth or while you're in birth? Then I don't know. I feel like it's a very confusing as you can tell with my rambles, a very confusing time because there is such limited information. Like the information that is coming out is quite controlled. And I think there's just so many women who maybe made these decisions not being able to consider any of this because the discussions hadn't happened. So, I just wonder, like, what are your thoughts on like the storytelling and the anecdotals as a way of placating women's fears?
My thoughts have evolved a lot. I used to recommend that every pregnant woman, no matter what kind of birth she was desiring, listen to the Free Birth Society podcast and hear those stories just to understand your body's made to do this. If for some reason there's a massive snowstorm or your car breaks down or there's a natural disaster or you're just going really fast, it's going to be okay. Listen to these stories. The babies just almost always just come out and it's fine. And I still believe that, but watching the Free Birth podcast turn into this money-making Free Birth Society and watching the rise of the rigidity and the dogma that there's never a reason to go to the hospital and the hospital is always your enemy and midwives are the enemy and vaginal exams are always rape and on and on. I mean, anybody can go listen to some of the later stories and you'll hear the dogma. That's a very different indoctrination process than storytelling and listening. Like I think it's the first season of the Free Birth Society podcast where they have that story of the woman birthing in the yurt with her wolf dog with her. That's a story every woman needs to hear. That is our powerful sister. It's like a epic tale of valor and heroism and magic and mystery that needs to be told. That wolf dog helping the woman birth in the yurt and the woman just doing it on her own in a snowstorm in the mountains. That's a story for the ages. That is very, very important. That's like fairy tales. It needs to be passed on. Very different than hearing your baby will be autistic if you get even one ultrasound and that you're basically a sellout if you decide to go into the hospital because an hour after birth your baby's gasping for air. That's not healthy storytelling. That's fear-mongering. It's just not useful. It's not helping women to do that. I still do tell women that you can't go into birth with any enemies. Like you can't go in with anything that you're viewing as a never, like I'm never going to do that. Over and over again, I saw women having to surrender to the thing they said never about. Just the two women who told me they'd rather die than have a cesarean, who told me that adamantly again and again, and guess how their births happened? They both had cesareans. And I think of my Irish grandfather who used to say, avoid saying never because it baits the fairies.
Yeah.
That the universe will show up, like God, whatever you want to call the forces that shape our lives. If you've said never, sometimes your life will say prove it. And you might have to change your mind on that. And I think that what was happening and may still be happening in a lot of free birth spaces is a lot of I will never, and this is how it's like this certainty and this hubris and this setting up of enemies. And some women will still have good birth experiences even in the midst of setting traps like that, but it's not ideal. And it's not surprising to me that the bad outcomes seem to be accelerating the more that dogma and rigidity increased.
Yeah. In that, do you think that there is a safe and wise way to free birth for anyone who is listening and trying to make the decision? Are there like I mean, we spoke about it briefly before, like that there are guardrails and these are the things to look out for, but maybe we can lay it down coming from you, a midwife who has experience and who has also free birthed. Are there things that women making this decision can ask themselves and look out for to make it safe?
Well, life is never safe, right? So to make it safer, for sure, to maximize your chances of a good outcome, absolutely. First is to do that work of, why do I want to do this? Where is this coming from? When I was considering an unassisted birth, there was this woman in my town, Maggie. She was really cool, and I didn't really know her that well. She was just cool, and I knew she hadn't had midwives at her births, and I wanted to ask her, like, how do I do that? How do I be cool like you? And I got her number from a mutual friend, and I called her up and was like, I heard you had your babies without a midwife, and I want to do that. And I was wondering, do you have any advice? And she paused and she said something along the lines of, if you're looking for my permission to do this, you shouldn't do this. So
Yeah.
that was really good advice. Like, she's like, I can't give you any advice. Like, you're either going to do it or you're not. And if you need somebody else to tell you it's okay to do it, it's not really coming from you. It's coming from a place that does value outside authority about your own birth choices. And that means you probably would be better served with a midwife. The second thing I would say is, if you're hiring a doula or a birth keeper, you are not having a free birth. You are having an attended birth by a birth professional, and that means you want to have an attended birth. Like, that is you acknowledging that is what your spirit wants. And if that's the case, I would do everything I could to find a woman who's been to a lot of births, who's handled heavy things at births, who's not afraid to transfer to the hospital if necessary to attend your birth. I would really avoid hiring someone who's charging money, who has been to fewer than 50 births. I think that I question the wisdom of a woman willing to put herself in that situation to begin with. I think that hubris in the face of birth is a very dangerous thing. And if a woman has been to 50 or fewer births, she shouldn't be charging money to be the primary birth attendant. And I definitely would not hire someone who's gone through an online program and gotten all of her training on the internet.
Yeah.
You may as well have a robot. I mean, that's crazy. That is like literally like that. That's a sign, again, of a real unwise person.
I feel like, I mean, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't want to have done by someone who's received all their training on the internet. Like, I feel like there's like a very large range of things that, especially now with ChatGPT, like the world's getting a little crazy. But when it comes to, I think like asking the questions, and this is something that I went through a couple of times with my births, because I was like, oh, do I want someone here? Like, my main thing was like, do I want someone here who, one, kind of knows, like, has an idea of birth, but is mainly just extra hands for my children, and for like getting and retrieving things, and like knowing where the exercise ball is, and they can bring that in, and knowing where, like, how to put on a cup of tea afterwards, like those kind of things. I was like, that, I mean, really, that's something that you can just get a family member who is, half okay with your birth choices to come and do. But yeah, when it came to having someone there, I'm like, my own reasoning around not having anyone in my space was that I didn't want them to bring their previous experiences with them or lack thereof, and then have one person or one more person who has experience or not that would influence my own judgment. And I, like, both me and my husband trust my judgment quite a bit because I'm quite trigger friendly when it comes to making a call to go to the hospital when it's something that I'm just like, no, I don't feel right about this. I don't feel good about it. Like, usually he's the one like, no, I think maybe we wait a little bit. But I'm, when it's in birth, he'd never do that. He'd be like, all right, let's go, like, straight away. So, that was our biggest, I don't know, when we spoke about how we were going to have our babies, like, that was our biggest thing. And I mean, for 3 of our free births, we actually had people on call or like the ambulance on call ready to go, because it was just like, just in case. Like, it's nice to have that backup. We don't know everything there is to know about birth. Right. Yeah. So
it's like hiring a Sherpa to climb Everest, or having someone who's taken a wilderness first responder class to go along with your long backpack, right? Like, it's okay to have help in the wings when you're doing something that entails those kind of risks.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I feel like, sorry, go.
But I think that wisdom you're saying of, like, you held it in the realm of all possibilities with your birth that you might need to go in. You weren't setting that up of like a never, or now, this is definitely going to happen here. I will never go in. It's, only having that, that new age thought process of, I can only think positive thoughts, or I'm attracting what I don't want, is not the way I think people should go into birth. I think you should hold the realm of everything that might happen and surrender to it. And that's how you maximize your chances of everything going really well, rather than shutting that door.
And then, like, another glorious side effect of that is that if you need the help, you've got it there. Or if you need to change your plans, you're ready and willing to do that. So, yeah, I think that, I mean, I had someone ask if there is a safe way to free birth, and it was hard, just pondering on that question. It's like, well, is there a safe way to birth? Like, it's hard because, we've had people fall into the dogma of, well, there's no safe way to birth, and there's no guarantee of any outcome, and there's no way that we could have known if that baby would have been fine if, someone had been there, or that woman would have been fine, or, or the opposite, like that hemorrhage wouldn't have happened if she hadn't have been in hospital and had there's all of these ways to, spin a situation. Like, it's really easy to kind of like, well, yeah, like when you're making these decisions, well, blah, blah, and it's all true as well. But it's like, well, there is no safe way to birth, of course, but there are still things that we know because of studies and the number of births that have happened in the world, and we can look at, and again, studies aren't always correct, I guess, but you can still take on that information when you're making your decisions. Like, okay, like these are general guidelines. And so, I don't know, it was really hard when someone was like, is there a safe way to free, or like, can you free birth safely, or what is the safest way to free birth? It's like, well, can anyone answer that? Like, is there an answer for that?
I think a woman asking that question is not a good free birth candidate.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good information to have. Can you elaborate?
Well, she's having doubts. She's making a decision from her head rather than her deepest knowing. That piece of us that is activated when we're birthing, that I think every woman who's had a successful natural birth, or nearly every woman, had to stop thinking and just let her body do it, and understand that that's a place where you realize, oh, this is not something happening to me. This is something I'm doing. It's just a much more ancient, deeper, primal part of myself than I am usually identifying with. So I have to abandon conscious thought and do this and be in this and let this primal process happen. I believe that part of us that births is the part that makes a true, clear, free decision to free birth. It's coming from this unconscious, ineffable part of ourselves that doesn't ask questions about safety. It's like, I know this is what I need to do. So the woman asking, how can I do this safely? It's like, well, you already told me you can't. You need a midwife. Like that's, if you like you need someone there to do the thinking, so you can outsource the thinking at your birth, and you can now just access that primal, deep part of yourself, because that's part of the midwife's job, right? Just let me sit here and hold the risk assessment. Let me be here while I'm knitting, and I can do the thinking, so you can just go wild and have your baby. And as long as I'm just sitting here and knitting, everything's fine. If I'm up and doing something, you don't have to worry. I'm not worried, but I'm just assessing things like that. That's someone who needs a midwife, who is someone who needs to know things are safe.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a really good point to make. And I also I've heard you say that story about the woman Maggie before on Isabella Malvin's podcast, and it hit home for me, because I'm like, that, I think that just explains a lot of what we're seeing culturally, like through social media and through this influencer era, is that so many people need to share their experience or share what they are planning to do. And so and that I think just comes with so many different complications, because if you have a following and you've said things like, I am going to birth this way, and then change that last minute, I feel like you've created pressures for yourself, maybe unknowingly or whatever, and maybe even creating your own dogma around it. And then what also, another branch that comes off that is what your followers are then digesting from the information you're sharing. And it's all just I don't know. It just feels like it's created such a mess, where the first or initial intention of sharing free births and free birth stories was we have this innate wisdom. We have, you have this innate intelligence to now this is trendy. It's the only way. There's a hierarchy with birth. It's and if you don't do it this way, then you're lesser than somehow. And I've been pondering. I don't know if anyone following my train of thought right now is probably oh God, she has just been overthinking this and thinking about it again and again. But it's been such an eye opener, with especially when listening to the Guardian podcast and reading that article, and then at the same time us having journalists, ABC journalists here who have been reporting on it, and really having to step back from, this is a really beautiful way of birthing and everyone should know and hear about it, which is coming from which I still believe is true, but it needs to be tapered with, now when you're making these decisions, let's have the full picture of what's happening so you can make an informed decision around it.
Right. Which is true freedom. That's true freedom, to have the information yourself, to know what you're doing, to arm yourself with the facts, while still making that decision from deep within yourself too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hear, and I so resonate with you, of this grappling with what is even going on right now. What is our culture? And I think what you're describing with influencer culture, it's so hard to discern what's really happening to us, because it's this hall of mirrors. It's just this like reflection of a reflection of a reflection of an original projection. That who even are these influencers? Are, we're all craving community, and we see a cool woman. The way I saw Maggie, like I wanted to be like her. I wanted to be cool. I wanted her approval of my choices. It's that magnified a million times. I mean, Maggie, unlike an influencer, put me on my place, and it was very clear that I wasn't cool enough to be her friend. By asking this.
Here are the pieces of my broken heart. Like, I don't need these anymore. Thanks.
Totally. I desperately wanted to be her friend, because she'd done this thing I wanted to achieve and do myself. And she so graciously said, that's not how you do it. It's not about being cool. It's not about somebody else's approval. It's the opposite now, where women are atomized. We are untethered from community. So many of us are alienated from our own families. We're now so many generations into broken birth that it's very hard to reach back and even have a sensation of what it was like for our how many great grandmothers who just gave birth without all of this, like, where am I going to do it and how am I going to do it? They just had to do it. They just had to step into the valor of risking your life and your health to bring more people here. It was your duty, and it was a valorous act that was demanded of you. It's very hard to even imagine what that was like. Now it's generation after generation of industrialized, medicalized attachment disorder birth. So of course women see a woman like Emily, who's charismatic and beautiful from the Free Birth Society, and you want to be her friend. She comes across as like your cool friend, and following her is an attempt to have a friend, to have sisterhood, to be in touch. And then she's offering an online chat room where you can connect with other mothers. And it's during this crazy time of COVID where where I lived, it was literally illegal to gather with other mothers. Women were doing it underground, but we were under health orders that it was literally illegal to have more than 5 people in a room. To find like-minded women who craved connection, who were critiquing all of that madness. The way I met Emily and Yolanda was through the transgender madness that was taking over the birth world. And I was desperate for sisterhood and community, and any other women who saw through this erasure of women and this ideology that I found so dangerous and so profoundly anti-woman, that I was so glad to meet these online friends. And so I'm not immune to it myself. It's just the soup we're swimming in. So yeah, how do we parse out what's even happening here when it's so multifactorial?
Yeah, for sure. And I too, I mean, I follow Yolanda, and there's so many things that she does share on, and I'm like, oh, like, you nailed it, like that 100%. And I can see how you could then go into that. I don't follow Emily as much, but it's so easy to then like fall into this, oh, okay, no, well, now they're saying this, and then so, maybe I need to change my mind about that too. And, it can be a really, and I mean, not even just in the free birth space, like that happens with so many influencers. If you follow someone, they really resonate for some things, and then they change your mind on so many different things, or invite you to look at things differently. But like, yeah, when it comes to this space of birth, which like when you're talking about our ancestors who used to birth and they used to have a midwife present, like I'm talking, generations and generations and generations ago, I mean, they were also very, like, much more connected to the land and earth and would be around farm animals and would have seen farm animals give birth, and how some farm animals really struggle. Like, I mean, we keep chickens at home, and so my kids have seen the life cycle of chickens quite a few times, and how, like, nature doesn't always get it right, like, or maybe it is right. Like, I don't know the answer to that question, but like in terms of positive outcomes, if what you're looking for is always a healthy chick and a healthy hen at the end of it, like, it just doesn't always go that way. And I feel like our ancestors kind of saw that as well. And so you had that innate sense of risk assessment when coming into birth. And I feel like that's being lost. It's being lost, one, without detachment from nature, and that's not people's experiences these days. They don't see animals being born, and they don't see like what birth can bring in so many different species. But and then also people just don't believe that we are animals ourselves. Like, we're that far removed from it. But then we also lose that, like, connection. I don't know, what am I trying to say? It's like we're losing our connection to what risk assessment is, but also what we can innately do. It's like that, this being closer to our food and our land and all of this kind of brought in these two elements that was like, okay, there is a risk here, but two, you can do it. Like, there is like that dichotomy of it, and we could hold both. But I feel like what happens online is that, one gets pushed to the side and the other is exemplified. And so when you go into the medical system, it's all like risk, and very little of you can do it. And then when you go, when the pendulum swings and we're over at the free birth side, it's all you can do it, and like no risk. So yeah, finding a middle ground there. This is what I'm trying to achieve with this conversation with you, finding the middle ground, because I just think that there is so much confusion out there, and not enough conversations that are more holding the two and giving people permission to get a midwife if you're worried, if you want someone who wants to have someone there just in case. Get a midwife. That is totally cool. If you want to be in a hospital because you're really worried about a number of risk factors, or you've had trauma previously, like, go to a hospital. That's also fine. Like, and we can navigate our way through, like, here on my audience knows all the risks of going into a hospital and like how that can jeopardize your birth. Like, that, so you can navigate that as well. So it's like, yeah, anyway.
Right. But even there, I think that it's okay to pray for angels in that system, to know that there are still some good people in that system, and that there is a time where that system has technology and skill that you can only access there, and that it's okay if circumstances arise that you need to go to the hospital. Go in with an open heart. Don't go in fighting. Don't be a sucker. Have guardrails up around you around those risks there. But there are still good people who work in that system, and thank God for safe cesarean in certain situations. I mean, it really is nice to live in a time where we don't live with as much maternal death as we used to. We've traded quite a bit. We've traded the gifts of childbirth. We've traded, I grieve every day that I don't get to live in a world where I'm surrounded by women who are just crackling with their power because they've had natural births. And I really wish that was the norm And you and I know that should be a minimum 80% of mothers should be empowered like that, because birth almost always works. And the trade-off is we have fewer sisters who aren't with us anymore.
Yeah. Trade-off, I think, is a great way to explain almost any decision you make, because I feel like any decision, like when you're going into choosing, especially what you want to do in birth, it always comes with a trade-off. Making that decision, probably one of the biggest things that I got from the Guardian article was like, if you're in a birth and you're asking questions to a group of women who is encouraging you to free birth, like if you need to ask a question, don't ask the question, just go and seek medical advice. Like it's
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm like, if you in yourself are like, I'm gonna ask, like don't go to people who aren't medical professionals. Like go and seek medical advice, because I think that there were scenarios that were shared in those episodes where it was like, it would have been so easy for those women who had concerns, they like innately had concerns, if they had taken that straight away to a midwife they knew, or to just taking themselves to a hospital, it could have been maybe, I don't know, but like you know, I think you're not wanting to free birth if you have to keep outsourcing answers to questions.
Right. It's a sign that it's time to deviate from that plan and go get help if you are asking those questions. I do think there's a third option. I don't know how commonly this is available, but I did many births where the women wanted to free birth but wanted me in the wings, and usually would call me after the placenta had delivered, sometimes before the placenta had delivered. Sometimes would call me during the labor if they just had a feeling they wanted me there. And that's an option. You need to pay that midwife for, being on call is a big part of the job, holding that responsibility. But to me, that's the midwife you want if you want true autonomy. When you're interviewing midwives, whether or not you want a free birth, you should ask her how she feels about free birth. It's hard now because the Free Birth Society had, like, this debacle that has just happened has clouded the water very much. If we rewind 5 years, that was a great question to just ask, how do you feel about unassisted birth? And in my opinion, the correct answer would be, I support women's birth choices, and if that is what a woman is freely choosing, that is what I'm going to trust is right for her. Next question, versus getting a whole bunch of fear feel back after that. So if you find a midwife who's comfortable with unassisted birth, the next question is, how would you feel about me just not calling you and just having my baby? And a midwife should be okay with that, especially if you've been getting good prenatal care and that risk assessment has been done where you are a healthy woman carrying a healthy head down baby at term. Why would I need to be there as a midwife if she's feeling she doesn't want to call me? That's an ideal situation that it sounds like everything's going to be fine. If she needs me, she can call me and I will come at that time.
That is good advice. So there was something that I wanted to ask very specifically about the Guardian article, because I think she reported somewhere between 40 and 50 stillbirths, or was it prenatal deaths? Maybe not. Maybe it was stillbirths within that
40
group.
to 50. And then a couple of neurologically devastated babies as well.
Yeah. And I was wondering with those numbers, because I know that you did you do work with Free Birth Society, or you were?
I knew Emily and Yolanda. I think they're both smart, charismatic women. I met them in the gender critical world. I did an event. I've never met Yolanda personally, but we were what I thought were pretty tight online friends for a while. I really think she's very, very smart. She's a great writer. I think she's also really rigid and dogmatic and has influenced people in some ways that I disagree with at this point. Emily, I've been real life connected to. So I was on their podcast multiple times. I was really supportive of what they were doing. And then when they started the Radical Birth Keeper School, we split ways because I honestly thought that was crazy. I thought it was insane to be training midwives in a 3-month online program and telling women you don't need to have ever attended a birth before to hang out a shingle and say you're an authentic midwife, a real midwife. What I saw happening in my community is women were very arrogantly asserting that they knew more than midwives who'd been practicing for 20 years because they had done this online program. Bad things were happening. There were multiple bad outcomes in my community that landed on my doorstep, and no one died in this. Well, there were multiple things where things landed in my hands to have to manage because these radical birth keepers didn't know what they were doing. And I got in touch with Emily and Yolanda and was like, you need to stop. This is not okay. If women want a free birth, they want a free birth. If women want a midwife, they need to hire somebody who knows what they're doing. And that was the end of our relationship.
Yeah, okay. So like the numbers that were then reported, do they seem about right from what you had experienced in your time there?
I didn't see the bad outcomes until that dogmatic cult-like attitude came in of never go to the hospital. There's never a good time to go to the hospital. And then the radical birth keepers who you'd hire a woman to parrot that same dogma at your birth and tell you everything's fine, even though you've been in labor 5 days and you're bleeding with every contraction and your water, the amniotic fluid is now brown and the baby hasn't moved in 2 days. Those are extreme. Those were happening. Those were multiple stories kind of fit that pattern from the Guardian article. I think having a woman trained in that cult-like attitude at your birth made the risks much, much higher for these women who, again, didn't want a free birth. They were hiring a birth attendant to begin with, and then they were hiring a woman who knew nothing about attending birth, knew nothing about keeping things safe, didn't know anything about neonatal resuscitation, hemorrhage management, anything like that. I think it was just a disaster. I don't know what led to it. I truly believe Emily and Yolanda mean well. I think very few people are actually coming from a malevolent place. But I also think greed is a virus and a deadly one that can get into us. And when you start making money hand over fist, you want to keep doing that thing that's bringing in that kind of money. And I think that influenced their decision making. They were making a lot of money training these birth keepers in a way that you can't make money just encouraging women to do something that's literally free. Like the word free is in the name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that probably clouded their discernment.
Could I ask you for your advice for women who want to be birth attendants and birth keepers and free birth keepers and doulas? Because I know that there is like a big attack on midwives, doulas, free birth keepers, and like some of it might, sounds fair. Some of it is not. And I feel like I have a lot of doulas who listen in here. And they're also trying to get a grasp around like what is happening in birth culture and like where is my place and those kind of things. And I was wondering if you had any advice, especially when it comes to free birth and being with a woman in that space for doulas and birth keepers.
I'm really not the right person to ask because I don't like the doula industry. I think it's a symptom of a really broken culture. And I think that it's weird that's become a profession. That was not even a word anyone knew when I started training as a midwife. It arose kind of in the late 90s. And hiring a doula means you don't have friends who know about birth. You don't have sisters. You don't have aunties, neighbors, mothers, right? Like this, the whole profession of doulas, I wish it didn't exist, So
Well, it wouldn't
so I'm
need to,
very-
would it? If
No.
like if everyone was in touch with birth, it wouldn't need to exist, because you would have your mum or your sisters in there with you, or aunties or cousins or whoever it was. I feel like, the doulas that I know are like the service that they are providing. And I know we have statistics on doulas here in Australia that birth outcomes tend to be better if you have a doula with you when you're in the system, especially I think for mother and baby, like anyone who has someone there with a little bit more knowledge around birth and is there as like the emotional
Absolutely.
help and that kind of thing. But I mean, it is an industry that's come up because we've lost all that connection to birth, and our parents didn't get to experience birth properly, maybe our parents as well, and all of our siblings. I mean, we don't have as many siblings these days. So there's,
When you're birthing in the system, a doula is there with you kind of as a bodyguard, or I guess a better metaphor would be if you were a woman traveling alone in a city with a very, very, very high rate of violence against women, and you don't know the language, you probably want to hire a woman who knows the language and knows the safe streets and knows what to avoid to travel with you, so you're less likely to be raped and murdered and mugged and all of those things. So that defensive posture of the doula in the hospital is also a symptom of a sick system. But I can see how that's kind of needed there. I just wish we had a culture where doulas didn't need to exist. So I'm not the best person to ask about that, because I'm kind of grouchy about the entire industry of doulas. And I also get really tired of when I tell people I'm a midwife, I'm always asked, oh, is that like a doula or something? And I don't like it that this has become the cultural reference point for a woman who helps women in birth, when midwifery is an ancient, archetypical, powerful female position. Doula is a made-up word. Penny Simkin made it up. It means female slave in Greek. It's not a real thing. Like,
but it's fairly accurate, isn't it? Like, you want someone to like run around and do the things for you. That's what you're
that's
hiring
probably
for.
true. Yeah. So I'm not the best person to ask about that. But I can say if a woman wants to be a midwife who is holding responsibility in the sense that she knows how to respond appropriately at a birth, because midwives have to hold an enormous amount of responsibility. They need to have the ability to respond in a way a doula can't even comprehend. Unless you've held that responsibility, you have no idea what it's like to hold that responsibility. Like this is an initiate. It's a process where you go through an apprenticeship, and then you have your novitiate, and then you're full practicing. Like that's ideally what a midwife is. I would say find a midwife who practices the way you want to practice and see if you can apprentice with her. And my advice in the United States to women who have the freedom to travel would be to go to one of the voluntary licensure states and find a midwife there where they're not practicing under all this pressure of the rules and can truly move from a place of honoring the choices that women are making freely, as well as their own wisdom about what they're willing to step into in the birth space. Those are the midwives practicing most freely. So
Is that,
I think
and
that's
does that differ state by state in the state?
very much.
In
Yeah,
America?
the United States is it's a free for all. The states do what they want. Or a state like Texas or Utah, where the midwives are allowed to attend breeches and twins, and you can get that level of risk assessment and understand that within that realm of breech birth, there's a big difference between, a woman who's had 3 8.5-pound babies, whose baby is now a frank breech, and a first-time mom with a foot presenting, to really learn those nuances around safely attending those higher risk births. That would be my advice, is to go find women who are practicing the way you want to practice and get that experience.
Yeah. Okay. I have one more question, which is like almost not really related, but I heard you speak on apprenticeships, and I live in an area where women are very boundaried with their time, and I wanted to hear where you sit on being a midwife or doula or anyone who works in the birth space, and also having very strict boundaries on your time.
I think in this digital age, we all give a lot of our time to devices, and I think that women first need to make an accurate assessment of where their time's going and why do they have less time than their great-great-great-grandmother, who had to get up and feed a bunch of animals and had 5 kids to attend to and had to fetch water. Like, why don't you have any time? And where could you reclaim some of your time? That's where I would start. And then I guess it would be the same response I would give to someone who said, I really want to be a concert pianist, but I have strict boundaries on my time. I'm like, well, it sounds like you don't really want to do that. That's not where you're willing to put your time, because this is something you have to pour yourself into to master. It is not something you can do half-assed. Want to be really good at it. You have to live the life of a midwife to learn how to be a midwife, in my opinion. I don't think you can learn to be, if you want to be a home birth midwife who's on call for other women, you can't learn that doing shift work. You can't learn that only working 3 days a week. You can learn to be a hospital midwife who manages epidurals all day long in shifts. That way, that works well. You can maybe learn to be a birth center midwife who works in shifts by doing that, but you're still probably going to have to spend pretty long stretches on call to do that. But if you want to be a woman who is devoted to being on call for birth for other women, you have to live that life to learn how to do it. The question is, how bad do you want it?
Yeah, and maybe the short maybe online course is not enough.
No,
Online weekend course is not enough. Like, it's like, if you want to be with women in birth, I feel like you need solid hours of attending as an assistant. Or
and I don't think that's true for doulas, because I think any nice lady can do that. I don't even think there should be any certification in that, because I don't think it should be a profession. I think that I joke about starting a program where, we have all this evidence that having a friend improves physical and mental health outcomes. I can show you stacks of evidence. So you can take my certified professional friend course and pay me $5,000. And then we're going to petition the state, because we have all this evidence of how useful it is to have a friend. But you don't want someone who's going to give bad advice, who's not properly trained. And the state's going to start paying women to be a certified professional friend. That's kind of how I feel about the industry. I'm sure I have angered so many people by saying these things.
that's okay. That's what I do here. There's always got to leave someone really angry. But I love you doulas as well. You're all incredible.
I don't think you need any certification. Like, for one thing, how do you certify someone's a nice, attentive lady? Like, anyone can jump the hoops and get the numbers and still maybe be a real jerk, Like, not be a good person to have at your birth, where the the resonance of a woman who you would like to have, as your friend, as that. So I don't think doulas. I mean, if you want to be a doula, just start attending births. Like, you literally have no liability and no medical responsibility. Just be very clear about it. Like, I don't know how to resuscitate. I don't know how to estimate blood loss. I don't know how to listen to heart tones. I am not here as a medical person.
Yeah.
I am here to just radiate good vibes. And
but even I feel like it needs to go even deeper than that, because like I can't tell you if you've progressed. I can't tell you like depending on how many births you've been to, and like unless you've seen those patterns play out in multiple different women in multiple different settings, like you can't risk assess if the woman wants to ask you, oh my gosh, does this seem right? Like you've been to 2 births, like you have to say, I don't know. Like I can't give you any of those answers. I can just be here and be your emotional support person. But like, look, having said that, I also know women who have had such incredible experiences with doulas, but all in the hospital. Like, you know, where there's been, you know, some hospital professional wants to jump the gun on some kind of procedure or something, and they've been able to buffer that a little bit to give the parents time to make a decision, or like to give the nurses time to get a heartbeat before they jump the gun. So, you know, certain situations like that, and I mean that in those settings that can be invaluable, but yeah, no, I do understand, and I feel like really quickly having some kind of certification for a doula, I think, is also muddying the waters for women who are choosing to pay for doulas at their birth, because what are you certified in? Like, you can't do anything medical, you can't respond in an emergency, you can't do any of those things. And I think when a woman feels like I think that information isn't being clearly defined for women going into birth and labour, and that's where things are getting really muddy, because you're paying someone, you're assuming because they're paid and they've got a certification in this that they've got these skills, and so often that's not the case. So yeah, I think clarity around all of these different modalities.
I also think the doula industry sets women up to not just go animal and have their births to a certain degree, where, I mean, I would just always caution women to know that if you think like my giant ball and my box of sniffy things and my rebozo are going to do anything to help you get your baby out, that's where we need to start. Nothing outside of you can help.
Yeah.
This is like if you're still thinking something outside of me can ease my suffering, can make this process easier, you're adding hours and hours and hours to your labor, sister, because you're going to have to hit that place where you realize, doesn't matter how hard they push on my back, I still have to let this get more painful. I have to let this get bigger. I have to surrender to this being so much bigger than I want it to be. And all of those comfort things the doula brings, in a hospital setting, maybe this isn't the case, but in a home birth setting, I think that can actually prolong labors, to believe there's something in that box of tricks that's going to ease my suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you tapped into the physical, but the emotional suffering too kind of needs to happen as well.
Right. I have to be stretched and pushed and expanded way beyond who I thought I was going into this in order for this baby to come out. And that's motherhood. That's the initiation of birth. And every time you do it, it is this enormous expansion process. And a big part of that is moving through your own fears and your own beliefs about where your edges are and your own idea of what you're capable of.
I think we should wrap it up there, Mary Lou.
I've so enjoyed this.
Oh, it's been so good to chat with you. Finally, it took me so long to get the courage up. Because I was like, she's so cool. You're my Maggie. But no, it's been so good to, I don't know, this look, I feel like I've sorted out some mush in my own head having this conversation. But yeah, and I hope that this is translated for those listening, because I know that there would be so many people in a confused state as I have been, still am to a little bit. But yeah, having your voice in this space, I think, brings a lot of grounding and reality to the situation. And I really appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me. I've had a really wonderful time talking with you. Maybe we could talk again sometime.
Yes, please. That would be amazing. Before we leave this call, Mary Lou, do you want to share with everyone anything that you've got going on, where people can find you if they want to listen to more?
Sure. I'm pretty immersed just in my clinical practice right now, but people can find me on my website, enchantedfamilymedicine.com. And I do, I will do televisits for people if you feel like I could be useful as a health consultant or as someone in your corner with your healthcare. I'm happy to do telehealth. And I do random podcasts when I'm asked. And we'll have some herb classes coming up. Probably in the spring, I'll be announcing those. And I'll be teaching at the Red Earth Women's Herbal Gathering in Colorado here in the United States in August, which I encourage people to check out. It's founded by Astrid, who is a midwife in Colorado. It's one of the most mother-friendly gatherings I've ever attended, the Red Earth Women's Herbal Gathering.
Ooh, that sounds so wholesome. What is a herbal gathering? Can we go into that?
Sure. It's a place where women who are interested in plants, and it's another peeve I have along with my issues around the doula industry. I don't like it that the term plant medicine has been stolen by the people who want to escape reality and do drugs. But if you're interested in medicinal plants that like comfrey and dandelion and calendula, and learning more about the wise woman tradition of herbalism that is our birthright as women, to be able to know the healing plants around us and use those as medicine for ourselves and our family and our communities, the Red Earth Gathering is a place to come do that. And it's welcoming to beginners who know nothing about herbalism. It's welcoming to women who've been practicing as community herbalists for decades. It's a wonderful gathering.
Oh, amazing. I've got lots to say, but I'm going to let everyone go. Thank you again so much, Mary Lou, and I'll share some of that information in the show notes so people can read it there. Bye, everyone.
Bye. So good to talk to you.
This is the Birth Series from Return to Wisdom. I'm going straight to the source, the women who free birth, the professionals who study real risk, to ask the question, what if free birth, done with eyes open, isn't the danger we've been told it is? I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If this has sparked something for you, I would really appreciate it if you would like, share, review. This is how we get the word out. The birth world, especially the natural and free birth world, has gone quiet, and these are the voices that need to be raised in this moment. I can't wait to explore this with you. See you next week.